What is going on, everyone? My name is Joe Ivan, and we are live on 90.3 WESS, East Stroudsburg University, East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. Thank you all for tuning in to the Weekly Cheese, the Pocono's #1 place for everything Green Bay Packer. Just as a reminder, everything you hear on the Weekly Cheese is my opinion, and nothing you hear reflects the views or opinions of 90.3 WESS or East Stroudsburg University. Now let's get into it.
My Green Bay Packers, I love you. I swear it's true. I live for Sunday. That's my one day. I can be with you every time you play. Pray the day will prove victorious. I'll beg for more, please. Run up the score. I could never get enough. My Green Bay Packers, I feel you deep in my bones. I get so lonely on that bye week. Oh, it goes so slow. When we pass that goal, it's so emotional. I shed a tear, it's true. My Green Bay Packers, I'm in love with you.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Weekly Cheese. This is the Week 11 edition. And boy, is there a lot to break down from the game that was put on display on Sunday afternoon. Just a crazy, crazy game. Honestly, I know I said this last week about the Jacksonville Jaguars game, but this game was by far the wildest Packer game that I've watched in quite some time. I can't even really put my finger on a game that was so up and down and had so many emotions tied into one. I mean, the amount of times in the last, 13 minutes of actual time, in real life time of that game, maybe the last 20 minutes of real life time, I went from happy to sad to mad to angry to sad to happy. I was all over the place, and unfortunately it ended with great despair. The Green Bay Packers will lose in overtime, 34-31, to the Indianapolis Colts in what was the ultimate tale of two halves. I mean, in the first half, the Green Bay Packers looked like the best team in the NFC. I mean, they took it right at the Indianapolis Colts defense, the highly touted Indianapolis Colts defense. And even when there were mistakes, the defense made up for it. The defense came ready to play in the first half. The Colts didn't nearly run the ball all over the Packers like they ended up doing in the second half. And yeah, the second half was just abysmal. Absolutely abysmal. I don't believe it could have gone any worse. It was just an overall heartbreaking defeat. Too many turnovers, way too many turnovers. Suspect defense, especially in the run and in zone coverage. Questionable play calling, especially on some third and short and fourth down conversion opportunities. And most importantly, just a horrible, shameful display of special teams football. And that's what we're going to start today's shows with. I don't usually spend any time talking about the special teams. Last week, I believe I allotted a minute maybe to go over how bad J.K. Scott was against the Jaguars and the special teams coverage as a whole. But man, the special teams play was so horrible on Sunday that it's what we're leading off with. For those of you who don't know, J.K. Scott was placed on the injury report late last week. I believe maybe Friday evening. If not, it was Saturday morning. And he was listed out for quote-unquote personal reasons. At first, I was concerned. I thought, oh, geez, I hope everything's all right. Personal matter. Must be pretty serious. Maybe something's going on with his family. We still don't know what the personal matter is. But strangely enough, immediately after J.K. Scott was announced to not be traveling with the team, the Packers actually signed a punter off the streets. And the entire Packer Nation was under the impression that J.K. Scott would not be playing in the game against the Colts. We find out that J.K. Scott is going to be playing. He's just not traveling with the team. Which, I mean, cool. It's great. He's making the effort to get down there. I don't understand why. Started thinking perhaps he had a COVID pop, or maybe someone in his life had a COVID pop. I don't know. Then my brain started thinking maybe J.K. Scott has some sketchy dealings to partake in somewhere in between Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Indianapolis, Indiana. That was just my brain going out there. I don't know. But he showed up, and quite honestly, I wish he didn't. Growing up, my whole life playing sports, I always was under the impression if you can't play, you shouldn't force yourself to play unless you know you could bring it. If you're going to play under any circumstance, you got to play to the best of your ability. You can't come out the way J.K. Scott came out, and it was very, very frustrating. I mean, in a dome, the Packers weren't even playing in like Lambeau Field with 50-mile-an-hour winds. They were playing in a dome, and he punted the ball 3 times for an average of 39 total yards. He did not have one punt that went further than 40 yards against the Colts. And this is the second week in a row now that J.K. Scott has had a horrible sub-40 punt late in the fourth quarter in crucial time. He punts the ball less than 40 yards and gives the Colts great field position on every single punt that he let off. And it was just aggravating. Part of me wishes he just dealt with the personal matter. I get it. I hope it's nothing serious, and I hope all is good for him. But it was not the game to have such special team debacles. And unfortunately, his horrible day punting was not even the worst of the special team debacles, because Darius Shepard was the man tasked with fielding the kicks and punts. Now, if you've been listening to this show for some time now, the past several weeks, you know my overall thoughts, feelings, and opinions on Darius Shepard. And it has been beyond me this entire season, since training camp. It's been beyond me why Darius Shepard is even on the Green Bay Packers to begin with, let alone the man fielding kicks. I understand Tyler Irving got hurt last week, and he's not available to field kicks for the Green Bay Packers. But you're telling me that there's not one guy out of the 53-man roster who are active on the active roster, there's not one guy on the whole team that could field a kick better than Darius Shepard? If that's the case, then the Green Bay Packers need to cut a lot of guys, because Darius Shepard is by far the worst kick returner that the Packers have had this decade. Dating back to last season, the Detroit Lions game, where Darius Shepard bobbled the one kickoff, then fumbled the punt, and had a ball ricochet off his chest that ended up getting picked off. One of Aaron Rodgers' only 2 interceptions last season. Or 4 interceptions last season, sorry. Why? How did he got cut. Darius Shepard was cut from the Green Bay Packers shortly after that game. He was relegated to the practice squad, and I believe he was actually cut in total at one point. So how did he get back here? How did he get back into the same position he was in last year? The position that he showed that he did not have the ability to step up and fulfill for the Green Bay Packers. And it begs the question, with the slang that the kids use today, whose man's is this? Whose man's is Darius Shepard? Seriously, is it? It has to be Matt LaFleur or Brian Gutekunst. It's one of those two men that believe in Darius Shepard for whatever reason. Is he dating one of their nieces? It's so aggravating. Darius Shepard is not an NFL player. He is not good enough to play football in the NFL. There are 100 guys sitting at home watching this game. I mean, it was the second highest viewed game of the season so far for the whole NFL. There's 100 guys watching this game at home that could field a kick better than Darius Shepard could ever imagine. It's wild to me. The reason I'm so heated, everyone, is because Darius Shepard fumbled a kick to start the fourth quarter for the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers were having trouble moving the ball the whole second half. 2 possessions in the third quarter, and on the first kickoff of the first possession the Packers were going to get in the fourth quarter, Darius Shepard fielded the kick and he fumbled it, giving the Colts amazing field position. And this is coming on a day where Darius Shepard failed to return the ball past the 25 more than one time. The Packers started behind the 21-yard line on all but two possessions. One kickoff got bounced on the goal line and it almost got down at the 3. And really, they were just kicking the ball short all day to Darius Shepard, and he was unable to do anything with it. Darius Shepard cannot be fielding kicks for the Green Bay Packers any longer, and if he is, there's a huge problem. And honestly, this mistake isn't even his fault. I'm not holding it over his head. It falls on whichever man in the organization is backing this guy and forcing this guy into the lineup. Could be Matt LaFleur, could be Goot, but Darius Shepard got to go. Whew. Sorry. I've been holding in Darius Shepard pain and hatred for the past 3 days. He aggravates me beyond no end. He aggravates me more than any Packer player has aggravated me in the past. And I really needed to just start this show and get that off my chest. The special teams for the Green Bay Packers over the past 3 weeks has been a huge, huge weakness, and it is something that will get them bounced from the playoffs very early. But now let's get into the offense. Standout performers for the Packers this Sunday on the offensive side of the ball. Aaron Rodgers completed 27 of 38 passes for 311 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did throw 1 interception. That's his 4th of the year. Still not all that many, but it is an interception in back-to-back games. I didn't even go to look when the last time that happened. I don't care when the last time that happened was. The answer is it hasn't happened in many, many years. This is his 3rd straight game with over 70% completions and over 8 yards per passing attempt. And all 3 of his passing touchdowns in this game came in the first half. Davante Adams had himself a game, 7 receptions for 106 yards and a touchdown. And those receptions came on the first couple drives of the game. And on the last drive of the game, he really didn't have a crazy loud game. It's pretty impressive that a 7 reception, 106 yard, and a touchdown game for Davante Adams doesn't even make noise. It kind of feels like he might have even had an average game with that stat line. But solid game. He had 2 huge catches on the final drive to put the Packers in field goal position. Ultimately, they could have scored a touchdown on that drive. But 2 huge catches combining for 32 yards, a 15-yard and a 14-yard in route. Aaron actually said today that one of them was a no-look pass. I didn't catch that on the game copy. I didn't catch it when I looked back, but after this show, I'm going to go back and see if I could pinpoint the no-look pass because that's pretty cool. And the last guy worth noting for the Green Bay Packers offense this past Sunday would have to be Big Bob Tonyan. 5 catches, 44 yards, and a touchdown. Solid blocking all day and just proving that he's still on the rise as a young stud of a tight end. And If he keeps on this trajectory, Packers have a keeper there. And the Green Bay Packers offense started hot. Hard to say that, but the first two plays of the game were explosive. I mean, a big 33-yard completion to Davante Adams to start the game, immediately followed by an 8-yard completion to Allen Lazard in his first game back, although he only played, I believe, 31 snaps and really didn't get that many targets throughout the game. On that first drive and just throughout the game when he was in, there was an obvious dimension added to the Packers offense that has been missing since his injury, and it was really nice to have Allen Lazard back, and we could all just expect him to keep raising the level of play over as he recovers from this core muscle surgery that he went under not but 6 weeks ago. So yeah, Lazard gets that 8-yard gain, and the Packers, within the first two plays of the whole game, advanced the ball into enemy territory. It was very, very, very satisfying. Obviously, we were all going crazy watching it at home, and based off the first two plays, I was under the impression that the Green Bay Packers offense was going to come out and really have a strong day. I mean, to hit Davante Adams for 33 yards on the first play of the game is a great sign. But the inevitable happened, if you ask me. On the third play of the game, Corey Linsley snaps the ball right into his derriere, forcing the fumble. Obviously, Aaron got charged with the fumble. But if you go back and watch that, Corey Linsley very clearly just places that ball right in his derriere, and it hits the ground. Packers lose the ball, lose momentum, and Corey Linsley comes out of the gates on the first drive with DeForest Buckner in his ear, his old buddy DeForest, and has a costly mistake that could have been horrible. Luckily, the Packers defense was able to respond and force a fumble of their own on the Colts' third possession of the game. First half, it was very strange, especially that first quarter, how things were panning out. The Packers fumbled in 3 plays. The Colts then fumbled in 3 plays. Aaron threw an interception shortly thereafter. 2 drives later, Rivers throws an interception. It was very balanced, and the defense did a great job at responding and getting the ball back for the Packers, not allowing any points off of Corey Linsley's mental error, a mental lapse caused by intimidation, in my opinion. People might get mad at me saying that, but at this point, I think it's clear to say that Buckner scares him. So after the Raven Green punches that ball out, forces that fumble, the Packers would go on to score the first points of the game. Beautiful 25-yard touchdown strike, Rodgers to Tunyon, and it was great. Got everything going, and momentum was right back in the Green Bay Packers' hands. But right after that play, right after the extra point, the camera pans to the sideline, and we all saw Corey Linsley kind of just softly limping into the tunnel. He didn't need any assistance. He was walking all with his own force. He was completely unaided in his travels back to the locker room. But he would not return. Corey Linsley left the game with a quote-unquote back injury. This comes shortly after DeForest Buckner basically forced that fumble. Who knows what DeForest Buckner was whispering in Corey Linsley's ear? I mean, it's pretty obvious to me that Buckner has been living rent-free in Linsley's brain for the past year, and this Colts defense is mean. They're a good defense, and Linsley leaves with an injury. Personally, I still am very skeptical of this injury. It's very hard to say because Corey Linsley has been such a rock for the Packers for the past decade, basically. Minor injuries here and there, but never anything major. And he's not been a guy that shows weakness. He seems to be able to handle most all pass rushers in the league. But there's something about DeForest Buckner that I swear makes this guy tense up. DeForest Buckner is in his head, and I believe that's why he decided not to come back. Maybe he was a little hurt, but it obviously wasn't too bad. Just yesterday it came out that it was a very minor back injury and that he shouldn't miss any time. So I'm very skeptical of the Corey Linsley injury. Luckily, it didn't turn out to be something that came back and haunted the Packers. In fact, it actually came back to be something that, in my opinion, helps the Green Bay Packers tremendously. With Corey Linsley limping out of that game early in the first half, forced Elton Jenkins to move to the center, which I was cool to see Elton Jenkins get in there. He played 50 snaps at center this game. And it allowed John Runyon Jr. to come in and play guard for major minutes, major snaps, against the best defense in the NFL. And let me tell you, they both rose to the occasion. Elton Jenkins showed that he could honestly play any position on the entire offensive line. He's played 4 of the 5 for the Packers this season, and he could easily play the other tackle if need be. It's really, really encouraging. And again, last week I brought up the fact that Corey Linsley's on a contract year, and the chances are the Green Bay Packers will not be re-signing him. So to see Elton Jenkins seamlessly move over to the center position and, in fact, play better than I believe Corey Linsley would have throughout the duration of that game. Elton Jenkins looked big at the center position. He looked like a big, big center, and he obviously was not afraid to force Buckner. And John Runyon showed once again that he is a complete steal for a 6th-round draft pick. Round of applause for Brian Gutekunst. John Runyon Jr. seems like he's going to be a pretty solid guard or any offensive lineman in this league for a very long time. He's got the Runyon bloodline. His father, obviously a tremendous offensive lineman in the NFL. And John Runyon Jr. in every snap he's taken this year has shown that he belongs. He does not look like a backup. He looks like a starter, and he will be the starting guard for the Green Bay Packers next season. I could already tell. And he laid down a tremendous block on DeForest Buckner on Aaron Jones' 2-yard touchdown run. He really got his hands on DeForest Buckner and drove him back. And sorry, I just don't think Corey Linsley would have done that. I'm sorry for the Corey Linsley hate. I know he has a tremendous following in Packer Nation, but I was very disappointed with the way he started the game, very disappointed to see him limp off with a minor back injury, but I was very happy with the results of him limping off with that back injury. The offensive line didn't do all that great of a job blocking for the run in this game. The Colts defense is really, really tremendous, especially their run defense. And the Packers, based on the second half and the way they were forced to punt, so like they had 2 3-and-outs to start the second half, there's really no room to run anyway. There was no time to run. The Packers needed to really start moving the rock. So that really attributes to the lack of production from the running backs throughout the whole game. I mean, they rushed for 66 yards as a team, and it was really just because no need to run in the way the game panned out towards the end. But the line did a fantastic job at protecting Aaron Rodgers. They only gave up 1 sack all game, and it was a coverage sack. I mean, he had 5-6 seconds to get the ball out. No one was open. Ended up getting swallowed up. Very, very encouraged with this Packers offensive line, and they continue to show that they're deep, versatile, and one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Couldn't be happier with it. The Packers would go on to score 3 straight touchdowns to end the first half, a 2-yard touchdown run by Aaron Jones, a 5-yard catch by Davante Adams, and a 4-yard reception by Jamal Williams. This allowed the Packers to go into halftime up 14, 28-14. And 28 points is more points than any team has scored on the Indianapolis Colts all season long. The most points they've given up all year is 27. The Packers put up 28 in the first half. That's saying something. The Packers' offense, when firing on all cylinders, and when the play call is consistent and good, the Packers have the best offense in the league. Or up there with the best offense in the league. Top 3 offense in the NFL. And I was very, very happy going into halftime. I'm sure everyone at home watching was very happy going into halftime. But unfortunately, that's when everything shifted. The Packers started the second half with 2 3-and-outs, and the Colts completely dominated the time of possession. The Packers failed to convert on 2 third-and-shorts on these 3-and-outs, one of them being a 3rd-and-1 where the Packers actually opted to throw the ball. Don't know why. I believe at that point you have 2 plays to run the ball for 1 yard. If you can't run the ball for 1 yard, your team's not worth anything. And the Packers only had 6 offensive snaps in the whole third quarter. They controlled the ball for a whopping 3 minutes in the third quarter, and it really did not do the defense any justice. I mean, the Colts started their offensive possession with a really strong long drive, and the Packers just could not stay on the field offensively, forcing the defense on the field for a major amount of minutes, tiring them out. It was not complimentary football. After a long drive by the Colts, in which they ended up tying the game after the Packers' second, third, and 3-and-out, that's when the disastrous fumble came from Darius Shepard. It was the first possession the Packers were getting in the fourth quarter, and it was honestly one of the most important possessions of the game. If the Packers at that point not even scored 3 or scored 7, if the Packers just got time off the clock, gave the defense a chance to breathe, get some water into them, rest up, things could have been totally different. But Darius Shepard fields the ball at the 4, runs to the 15, gets stripped, and the defense has to come back on. Luckily, the defense was able to hold the Colts to a field goal, didn't give up a touchdown after that horrible fumble by Darius Shepard. The Packers were able to get the ball back with 3 minutes, and they began to drive down the field. They ended up turning it over on downs. After they ended up turning the ball over on downs, that means they went for it on. They passed up a Mason Crosby 52-yard field goal, which would have tied the game, and they opted to go for it on 4th and 1, which I'm okay with. But not when you run a play-action pass that got blown up. The play got blown up, and Aaron was forced to just try to get this ball to Jamal Williams. The play wasn't even drawn up for Jamal. You could tell Jamal didn't even expect the ball to come to him. And they turned it over on downs. With about 3 minutes left in the game, they shaved like 30 seconds off the clock. At this point, after the Packers turned it over on downs, I could have sworn the game was over. It felt like the game was over. The Packers ended up getting a 12-man on the field penalty on that drive, of giving the Colts 15 yards. The Colts were in field goal range. But then, the strangest series of events that I've ever watched. I'm not a Colts fan. I'm a Packers fan. So the fact that it happened, I was extremely grateful for. But if I was an Indianapolis Colts fan, I'd be blowing the whistle on some foul play from the NFL, because after the 12 men on the field penalty, the Colts had 3 straight penalties. Ended up forcing a 3rd and 19. On the 3rd and 19, they get 12 yards. 4th and 4. They convert the 4th and 4. Now the Colts have a new set of downs with about 2 minutes left on the clock, and the Packers blew a chance to get the ball back with a little over 2 minutes and 3 timeouts left. It's obviously over at this point, right, everyone? Obviously the game's over. 2-minute warning. The other team has the ball, fresh set of downs. But no. The Colts then have 5 consecutive holding or illegal formation penalties. They had 5 consecutive penalties on the offensive line, forcing another 3rd and 20. The Colts end up having to punt the ball back to the Packers. And at this point, just like all of you, I was screaming like a ninny. I could have sworn Aaron Rodgers was coming into the game to lead the Packers down the field, to sneak away with a win. A game that the Packers should not have won, but they were going to do it based off of sheer willpower. They were going to do it. And luck from the referees calling in basically 10 straight penalties on the Indianapolis Colts. The Packers got the ball back with 1 minute 25 seconds left, and after they got the ball on the 6-yard line, and after 2 incompletions, on 3rd and 10, Aaron Rodgers hits Marquez Valdez-Scantling deep downfield, 47 yards, past the midfield line, and everything erupted. It was an electric moment. Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I look at my cousin and I say to him, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, welcome to the Green Bay Packers. You finally have arrived, my friend. I was so happy for the guy. I was so happy for us. I was so happy for the Packers. But the Packers can't score a touchdown. Devontae Adams has a 14-yard reception, then a 15-yard reception. The Packers get in the red zone, and they end up having to tie the game with a field goal. Still great. Happy. Packers still have a chance to win this game. They should not have a chance to win this game, but they do. It's going to overtime. And what do you know? For the first time that I could ever remember, the Packers won the coin toss. They were getting the ball first. Aaron Rodgers was finally getting the ball first in a huge overtime. And the game was over. I had no doubt. I literally did not have one bone in my body telling me that the Packers weren't going to go down the field and at least get 3, but I could have sworn 7 was on the way. 7. An 8-yard gain on the first play of overtime. Aaron Jones right up the gut. And then Marquez Valdez-Scantling fumbles on a little wide receiver screen. I don't like the play call. MVS fumbles. Devastating fumble. Gives the ball to the Colts in field goal range already. They kick the field goal. Game over. Packers lose. Heartbreaking defeat for the Green Bay Packers. Heartbreaking way to have it end. But boy, if that's not the Marquez Valdez-Scantling experience, if that isn't MVS tied up into a nicely presented little package, from catching the biggest ball of his career in a game-saving 47-yard bomb on 3rd and 10, backed up in the end zone on the final drive of the game, to fumbling in overtime in enemy territory. It was tragic, and I felt so bad for Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Obviously, I felt bad for myself. I felt bad for every Packer fan out there, and I felt bad for Aaron Rodgers. But the roller coaster of highs and lows is the story of Marquez Valdez-Scantling. And after the game, to finish up this offensive segment, we have this week's staccato of the week. And no, it's not Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I'm actually very happy with Marquez Valdez-Scantling, despite his horrible, inopportune fumble, because he shows he's mentally tough, and he's improved every week this season. And I have no doubt that this is just going to be another huge learning moment for him, and it's going to be something that propels him forward, just like his poor game a couple weeks ago. And he obviously cares. Marquez Valdez-Scantling obviously cares about what happens out there on the field. But the staccato of the week is Packers reporter. He's always asking questions at the end of every game. Every week he's asking questions. Mark Daniels. He's a common name in Packer Nation. And he asked the most pitiful, unprofessional, and downright needless comment. He asked the most needless question to Coach LaFleur after the game, and that was, how can you live with Marquez Valdez-Scantling? How can you live with MVS? LaFleur gave a great answer, totally got MVS's back, and obviously there was the death threats that Marquez said he received. And hey, I get it, Packer Nation. I do. You know that one time I shared the story how I sent Mason Crosby some death threats, but I regretted it. I openly admitted that I regretted the anger. It wasn't a death threat I sent him. I just sent him a very scathing message. I don't remember what the content was exactly. There might have been a death threat in there. That's besides the point. I apologize to him. But to ask that question as a member of the media, obviously Mark Daniels is way older than Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Put yourself in his shoes. He's a young kid. He just had the play of his career, and he didn't want to fumble that ball. He's not Ty Montgomery. He's not a saboteur. So shame on you, Mark Daniels, for asking a BS question. You are the staccato of the week, my friend, and if by some chance you hear this, I hope you take it to heart. You're the staccato of the week, week 11. Horrible blemish on your personal record, Mark Daniels. But yeah, I think MVS is going to be okay. I think he's going to learn from this. He obviously cares a lot, and he's shown time and time again that he responds extremely well to adversity. Going to take a quick break here, come back with the defense, and look forward to the week coming up. Chicago Bears coming to Lambeau for a huge NFC North matchup. Don't go anywhere. This is the Weekly Cheese, 90.3 WESS, East Stroudsburg University, East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. Be back in a couple minutes.
So proud of that. I just fill up. It's not going to come easy. This is a club that's going to hit you. They're going to try to hit you. You're going to take it out.
This is a Daddy Not Purdue.
You know what it do. Every time we play, it's a W. Yeah, that's the pack cuz. It's the title town team. That song, reppin' my town. When you see me, you know everything. Green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow. From the signs to the hats to the jersey, I'm in green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow.
You know what it is, you don't even need a clue. Throw it up like bulimics do. My team running that scenic group. 6 points on, we go for 2, and they already knowing, cause that other team seems stressed. I guess they good at sewing. I'm like Aaron when I'm zoning, so shout out to Green Bay. Putting yellow on green like a flag on the play. When I'm in that game, no interference, no distraction or delay. And what them players do on a daily, and even a fraction of what I make, I introduce you to a Hall of Famer, all Madden gamer. Play my lines back like AJ Hawk, because I spit that flamer and I don't talk, man, I just go hard. Green and yellow whip and I got it on them wheels. Vince Lombardi, we can show you how a Lambo feel, for real.
You know what it do. Every time we play, it's a W. Yeah, that's the pack cuz. It's the title town team. That song, reppin' my town. When you see me, you know everything. Green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow. From the signs to the hats to the jersey, I'm in green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow. They're negotiating, got me signing contracts. Through my Gmail, you should see my contacts. Hustle drop cards, no longer compact. We do it digital, they tweet me, I respond back. Hey Dave, that's what the girls say. Get respect because we always come in first place. Check my resume and my birthplace. That's the first step, now we round the earth, babe. Yeah, Prop P and I'm top seed. Watching Donald drive a score from the box seats. And I'm clean, nothing you could tell them. Revolution team of rebels, reppin' for the green and yellow. Yeah, you know what it do. Every time we play, it's a W. Yeah, that's the pack cuz. It's the title town team. That song, reppin' my town. When you see me, you know everything. Green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow. From the signs to the hats to the jersey, I'm in green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow. Touchdown, yeah, that's a touchdown. I like how that sound coming from a packed town. I know you see me scoring, hear the crowd roaring. Yeah, you know what it do. Green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow. Yeah. You know what it do. Green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow. Reppin' my town, when you see me, you know everything. Green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow. From the signs to the hats to the jersey, I'm in green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow, green and yellow.
And we are back. This is the Weekly Cheese, 90.3 WESS, East Stroudsburg University, East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. And this is the number one place for everything Packer in the Poconos. That was Prophetic and Pizzle with their official green and yellow. And let's get into it. The Green Bay Packers defense on Sunday was a tale of two halves as well. In the first half, they did a great job responding. They responded to both of the first half turnovers by forcing turnovers of their own. Raven Green, right after Corey Linsley had his own version of the butt fumble, the Corey Linsley variant of the butt fumble, Raven Green was able to punch a ball loose and force a fumble of his own, getting the ball right back to the Packers, no harm done. And then Christian Kirksey picked off Phil Rivers as Billy Wynn got up there. Big Billy Wynn got his mid up in the air, tipping that pass, allowing it to fall right into Kirksey's hands. 2 drives after Aaron threw his interception, negating that turnover as well. And in the first half, the defense, well, throughout the whole game, really, the defense did a great job at limiting scores off of turnovers. They only allowed 6 points off of the Packers' 4 turnovers, and that's huge. As poorly as the defense played and as many bad things as I'm about to bring up, the Packers' defense responds well after turnovers. Even against Jacksonville, after the turnovers, the fumble and the interception, they only gave up 6 points as well. So That was two positives that we could take from the Packers defense against the Indianapolis Colts. They responded. And in the first half, they didn't do a bad job stopping the run. They were able to contain things. They were pressuring Phillip Rivers, forcing a lot of errant passes. Darnell Savage had a pass deflection in the first half that could have been picked. And things weren't comfortable for the Colts offense the entire first half. But in the second half, the Packers defense was simply just unable to get off the field. They allowed 17 straight points to start the second half. The Packers only had 6 offensive plays in the third quarter and that fumble to start the fourth quarter, which basically means that the defense was on the field for 3 straight long drives. And they were tired, and it showed. The Colts made an adjustment after halftime. Obviously, they made an adjustment to the game plan. And they just started pounding the ball right down the middle of the Packers' defense. I mean, 8 straight runs to start the second half. And the Packers' run defense was absolutely atrocious. Besides Kenny Clark, who finished the day with 6 tackles, 2 hits on the quarterback, and a sack, the defensive line had a very hard time winning the battle up front. Lancaster and Lowry got moved around, especially in that second half. The Colts just started running the ball in the middle of the hashes, and they were just getting moved. Lowry, Lancaster, Billy Wynn, Kingsley Keke, they were just getting moved by the Colts' stellar offensive line. I mean, they have a studly offensive line. They have Quentin Nelson, probably the best right guard in football. But Kenny Clark really did a good job, and Kenny Clark seems to be fully healthy again. Past 2 games, he's really done a good job at controlling things in the middle, but he's really the only guy on that line that's consistently getting any sort of movement up front. And a big part of this run defense that was so abysmal in the first half, and second half, was the missed tackles. The Packers all season have not been tackling well in the open field. 9 different players on Sunday missed tackles for the Green Bay Packers, and the Colts were allowed to pick up 110 yards rushing after first contact and 170 yards after catch. 75 yards of Jonathan Taylor's 90 yards rushing came after contact, and he single-handedly forced 4 missed tackles himself. This wasn't just this past game, wasn't just this past couple weeks that the Packers have been missing tackles. They've been missing tackles all season long. They have 81 missed tackles as a unit through the first 10 games of this season. And it's one of the major reasons that any of these teams are able to move the ball so efficiently on the Packers. There's no big plays going over the back of the defense's head for 20 yards. Granted, that's because Pettine's scheme that we'll get into in a couple minutes and his love for lining guys up so far back, but teams are just running the ball, running through defenders, breaking tackles for 4, 5, 6 yards consistently. Or they're catching a ball for 5 yards and they're exploding to the end zone for a touchdown. It's really, really hard to watch. The pass rush on Sunday was decent, I would say. The first half, it was much better than the second half. But the Packers were able to pressure Phillip Rivers 11 times. They were only able to sack him once. Rashawn could have had a sack. He didn't finish the play, got a little juked out by the pump fake. Preston missed a sack. But overall, a solid game rushing the quarterback. Phil Rivers did a better job handling the pressure than I thought he would. But Zadarius Smith was just all over the place. He recorded 6 tackles on the game. He had 2 quarterback hits himself. And he had that forced fumble right at the end of the game. That was probably one of the craziest plays of the whole game. I was talking about my emotions throughout that whole second half. That was when they were at an all-time high. I actually ended up straining my voice when that was going on because I still believe right now, sitting here talking to you at 10:45 at night, 2 days after the game, that Zadarius Smith forced Phillip Rivers to fumble that ball on that final possession. I don't know why the Colts were running the ball, not running the ball. I don't know why they were insisting on throwing the ball. But Zadarius Smith, that was a sack, forced fumble. They ended up giving Phil Rivers the incomplete pass. But there is a still shot that was captured by Evan Siegel, the Packers photographer, that I would urge you all to check out on his Instagram page. And I believe Zadarius also posted it. It's the moment the ball comes out, and Phillip Rivers' arm is obviously not moving forward. Obviously not. That should have been a game-ending touchdown. But besides the fact, the Packers didn't deserve to win the game even with that. I'm not complaining about that being an incomplete pass. I would have wanted it to be an incomplete pass if it was Aaron Rodgers. But against the Vikings a few weeks ago, it wasn't an incomplete pass when it was Aaron Rodgers. Same exact play, and it was a fumble. Rashawn Gary is continuing to show that he is progressing into a very, very strong pass rusher in this league. He had 4 pressures again on Sunday, 3 tackles, a defended pass, and a huge hit on Rivers. It was great to see. And unfortunately, very much unfortunately so, Preston Smith is continuing to struggle. This whole season, he has had a major drop-off in play that we saw last season. I hate to think that he's kind of losing his edge with that big contract he did sign last year, but right now he is grossly overpaid for the production that the Packers are getting out of him. I mean, last season he was a stud. He logged 62 pressures on the season and 12 sacks. And this season he's playing 81% of the snaps on the defensive side of the ball, but he only has 15 pressures and 2 sacks. He's on pace to finish with 24 pressures and 3 sacks. And that is a massive drop-off from the production that we saw from Preston Smith last season. And with that being said, Rashawn Gary has stepped up big this season, especially the past 2 games. First 2 games of the year, he played great, got hurt with an ankle injury, was nursing that for a little bit, but Rashawn Gary's back. And he has 22 pressures this season, 2.5 sacks, and Pro Football Focus has him ranked 23rd overall in pass rusher productivity. Preston Smith is 91st ranked in pass rusher productivity, but for some reason, Rashawn Gary is only playing 40% of the snaps on the defensive side of the ball. It makes no sense to me. I believe that Rashawn Gary, from now on, at least for the next couple games, should start instead of Preston Smith. Not only do I think that it makes sense from the productivity standpoint. I mean, Rashawn Gary in half the snaps has doubled the productivity, but it could potentially just light the fire under Preston Smith that he needs. Maybe he's too comfortable. Maybe he's a little too full of himself. Maybe having Rashawn Gary come in there and start taking his snaps will get him going, get him motivated. I mean, the Packers got to do something to get Preston Smith going for the playoffs. So I don't see why. I hope next game Rashawn Gary gets more snaps. I'm not saying eliminate Preston Smith from the defense, but get Rashawn Gary in there a little more. Consequence Preston Smith for his lack of production with less snaps. It only makes sense to me. Another glaring issue from the defense on Sunday was the middle of the field. And again, this is an issue that the Packers have had throughout this season. The middle linebackers just cannot cover anyone. Cannot cover anyone. Kamal Martin is still wet behind the ears. He's a late-round draft pick coming off a knee injury. He still has no clue what he's doing out there, really. He's just learning as he goes. And I'm happy with the way he's playing for the circumstances that he's been dealt. But Christian Kirksey is just horrible in coverage. He is absolutely ineffective. He did have 11 tackles and an interception in the game, but that does not make up for the fact that he cannot cover anyone in zone. I mean, he on Pittman's touchdown in the first half, that 40-yard walk-in touchdown he had, that was Christian Kirksey's man to tackle. Pittman caught the ball 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. Christian Kirksey was just so slow that he had no chance to even get to Pittman. And Pittman was able to just waltz into the end zone for a 40-yard touchdown, taking a 40-yard touchdown out of a 5-yard completion. And the middle of the field is just getting picked apart. It happened with that guy I can't even remember the name of for the 49ers who had the career game, had 190 yards or something like that, all in the middle of the field. Happened last week with Chark and co. And happened this week. Phillip Rivers, 14 of his 24 completions were made between the numbers, and 75% of his total yards came between the numbers. It's as if no one's covering the middle of the field, despite being lined up 10 yards from the line of scrimmage. It really makes no sense to me. The secondary as a whole didn't play horrible. I mean, Kevin King and Jair Alexander were back in action. And they combined for 10 tackles, 2 passes defended. Shandon Sullivan continues to play poorly in zone coverage. I mean, he's just as bad as Christian Kirksey when it comes to playing zone coverage. And he also missed 2 tackles of his own. The 2 shining lights in the secondary this past week were Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage. They combined for 13 tackles, 2 passes defended. Darnell almost had an interception of his own, and they combined for 1.5 tackles for a loss. But man, the overarching question about this whole defense, and yeah, it falls somewhat on these players, and obviously the Packers defense does not have the personnel that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense has, that the Colts defense has, and the guys are trying. I'm not accusing them of playing without heart, although sometimes it looks like they are playing without heart. But what is Mike Pettin doing? I know he's getting a lot of hate right now in the media, and people are calling for his job, and I can't agree anymore. Last year was a total tease, in my opinion. We had the Smith brothers playing at career highs. Preston Smith was an animal, and the Packers defense was just able to force a bunch of turnovers. But this year is not the same. They're 31st in the league in takeaways, and it just makes no sense when Mike Pettin continuously puts out there week in and week out on the defensive side of the ball. He insists on playing soft coverage. He lines all the defensive backs up to the at least 10 yards from the line of scrimmage. They are on the line to gain every time the Packers line up defense. There's 3 rushers, and the corners and DBs are just sitting back 10 yards off the line of scrimmage. And late in the fourth quarter, on the 3rd and 19, on the first 3rd and 19, the one that they ended up completing the 4th and 4 after, every defensive back was lined up 20 yards from the line of scrimmage. And the Colts were able to just complete an easy screen pass for 12 yards, making a very easily convertible 4th and 4, especially with the way the Colts were playing. And they extended that drive. It absolutely makes no sense to me why he doesn't change anything up. He apparently loves lining Preston Smith up in man coverage, one-on-one man coverage. And the second touchdown the Colts scored was a direct result of Preston Smith being lined up in press coverage on a tight end. He got totally cooked. Preston Smith is a pass rusher, and this season he's not even a good one at that. Why are you lining up in press coverage against a tight end? I don't know anything about defensive X's and O's, and I could tell you that that's not a good move. And the biggest issue that I have with Mike Pettin is his hard-headedness and his overall unwillingness to adjust. He doesn't adjust after games, obviously. He brings the same scheme, the same soft coverage defense, soft pass rush, week in and week out. And it was very obvious on Sunday that he does not like adjusting in the game. I don't know if he doesn't know how to make in-game adjustments, but it was very obvious at the beginning of the second half that the Colts made adjustments and they have a whole new game plan, and they're just going to run the ball down the throat. They're just going to run down the center. They're going to complete passes in the center of the field. And Mike Pettin did not do one thing to adjust. He did not respond in one way. It's so aggravating. It's so aggravating. He seems... It just makes no sense. Adjustments need to occur throughout the game, and the Packers all this season have not adjusted once defensively throughout the game. The only time they adjusted was last week against the Jaguars, and I believe it was Matt LaFleur. Late in the game, the Jaguars are driving, and Pettin is still rushing 3 and lining up 10 yards off the line of scrimmage in a soft zone coverage, and Matt LaFleur called an inexplicable timeout, and they came out in man coverage rushing 4. It must have been Matt LaFleur. The last horrible thing that I must bring up about Mike Pettin is his inability to develop. He has no ability to develop talent. All his high draft picks, 1 through 3, his first through third round draft picks, since he's been the defensive coordinator for the Packers, the majority of them have not panned out. Josh Jones, Montravius Adams, Josh Jackson, Oren Burks, they all seem to be busts. They have not developed. And the only one who's showing potential right now, Rashawn Gary, he's playing half the snaps on defense. And Preston Smith is playing double the amount of snaps as he is, and Rashawn Gary's been out playing him all season. If I was Mike Pettin, I'd want to develop Rashawn Gary. Get him out there. Get him out there. It just makes no sense. Same old frustrating Packers defense. And we could only hope as Packer Nation that things firm up, adjustments get made, people come together, and the defense starts playing with a sense of togetherness and passion that we're yet to see from them other than that short glimmer at the end of the Jacksonville game a couple weeks ago. Now, with all that being said, despite giving up 4 turnovers, getting dominated in time of possession, and just an overall miserable game from the Green Bay Packers all around, especially the second half, the Packers only lost by 3 points in overtime to the top defense in the NFL and to a team that could potentially be competing for an AFC Championship game in January. So to me, there's still some things to feel good about. Packers had the worst second half that I've ever seen, and they lost by 3, and they still had a chance to come back and win that game at the end of regulation and in overtime. So I want to emphasize to all the Packer fans listening right now that we cannot feel so emotional after this past game. The Bears are coming into town next week. We'll look ahead to this next week. The Bears are coming into town. Big divisional game. The Bears are 5-5, and they have lost 4 in a row. They don't want to lose 5 in a row, especially not to the Green Bay Packers in a huge divisional round game. If the Packers beat the Bears, they're 3 games ahead in the division. But I have no doubt the Bears will be coming to play. They have a fantastic defense, and the offensive line needs to come ready to play and continue to protect Aaron Rodgers, as they have been all season. Khalil Mack is an absolute beast. They have a couple other guys on that D-line that are absolute beasts. And it's going to be the O-line. And I'm looking for the defense to have the best game of the season. The Bears' offense is abysmal. They have not been able to move the ball consistently all season long. Lord knows who's going to be their starting quarterback. Honestly, it doesn't matter. Foles, Trubisky, they both suck. The Packers' defense needs to have a stellar performance. They need to have a performance like they did against the Niners, but better. They can't allow anyone to go off for 194 yards. They need to control Cordell Patterson in the special teams game and on the offensive side of the ball. And they just need to come ready to play. The Packers need to take care of business. I'm predicting a 31-10 win over the Bears in Lambeau Field. Sunday Night Football, huge game. But yeah, they have a game next week. So they need to put this game behind them. Us Packer fans need to put this past game behind us and just take the lessons that came with it. It's a long, long NFL season. An NFL season is not chalked up to one game. A team's fate is not determined by 1 or 2 bad performances. In fact, 1 or 2 bad performances can be just what a great team needs to propel themselves to the Super Bowl. So I guess the message I want to leave everyone off with as we wind down here on the Week 11 edition of the Weekly Cheese is to continue to take it one day at a time. This is a very good Green Bay Packers team. The offense is amazing. Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones. We have names. And in the NFC, that's really all that matters. The defense will continue to get better, I hope. I hope Pettin can make some adjustments. MVS, don't feel too down on him. I can guarantee next week against the Bears, MVS is going to have a great game. I don't believe he's going to fumble. I believe he's going to take the learning experience that was this past Sunday. I believe the whole team will take the learning experience that was this past Sunday. And us fans need to take the learning experience that was this past Sunday. Need to move on, get better, and continue to strive. I mean, this Packers team, I don't have any less confidence than I did after last week's performance, and we beat the Jaguars. In fact, I have more confidence this week than I did following the Jaguars game. And that's because with 4 turnovers, with no time of possession in the second half, a tired defense, missed tackles, and everything that went on, the Green Bay Packers lost by 3 in overtime to a Super Bowl contender in the AFC and scored more points in the first half against the number 1 defense in the NFL than they have allowed all season long in a full-time regulation game. And we just got to stay positive, Packer Nation. Got to stay positive. It's going to do it for this week's episode of The Weekly Cheese. Thank you all again for tuning in. Those of you listening on Route 80, drive safe. Have a great night. And I'll catch you guys next week after the Packers seize a commanding lead in the NFC North and demolish the Bears on Sunday Night Football. Have a good night, everyone. This is Weekly Cheese, 90.3 WESS, East Stroudsburg University, East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. And as always, remember, the cheese stands alone.